The gleaming research vessel hung motionless in space, its sensors focused on the blue-green planet below. Inside the ship's main laboratory, Commander Gray stared at the readouts with growing concern. His four eyes blinked rapidly in sequence, a sign of extreme distress among his species. "Run the calculations again," he ordered his science team. "These readings cannot be correct." The ship's computer hummed quietly as it processed the data for the third time. Around him, his crew of researchers shifted uncomfortably, their scaled skin changing colors in response to their anxiety. They had been tasked with a routine verification of planetary classifications in this sector, but what they found was anything but routine. "Commander," his chief scientist spoke up, "the results are the same. The original classification of Earth as a Class 3 Deathworld was a massive error. The readings they're off our existing scale." Commander Gray moved to the main display, his long fingers dancing across the control panel as he reviewed the findings himself. The evidence was undeniable. The gravity, atmospheric pressure, temperature variations, radiation levels, biological diversity, and geological activity all pointed to one impossible conclusion. Earth wasn't just a death world, it was something far more extreme. "Look at these readings," he said, highlighting specific data points. "The dominant species regularly survives temperature swings that would kill most sentient beings. They live in areas with active volcanoes, deadly storms, and constant tectonic activity. And their bodies." He paused, trying to process what he was seeing. "Their bodies can repair damage that would be fatal to any other known species." The science team gathered around the display, their professional detachment crumbling as they absorbed the implications. One of the younger researchers, fresh from the academy, spoke up. "But Commander, we've been trading with humans for the past 5 cycles. How did we miss this?" Commander Gray's scales shifted to a deep blue of worry. "Because we trusted the original survey from 10,000 cycles ago. Nobody thought to check it thoroughly. We assumed Earth was just another Class 3 world, dangerous but manageable. We were wrong. Terribly wrong." He pulled up footage from Earth's information networks. The images showed humans participating in activities they called sports, climbing frozen waterfalls, diving into deep ocean trenches, running for days across burning deserts. Each new image caused the alien researchers to back away from the screen in horror. "These aren't survival situations," the chief scientist noted, her voice trembling. "They do this for entertainment." Commander Gray nodded grimly. "And that's not even considering their war capabilities. A human can continue fighting with injuries that would incapacitate any other species. They can survive without food for weeks, heal from broken bones, and their endurance." He trailed off, unable to continue. The implications were staggering. The Galactic Council had been allowing unrestricted travel and trade with a species that could survive conditions that would kill most other sentient beings instantly. Humans weren't just tough, they were practically indestructible by galactic standards. "Prepare a priority transmission to the Council," Commander Gray ordered. "Classification: urgent. Security level: maximum. The Council needs to know what we've discovered." As his crew scrambled to compile the data, Commander Gray looked again at the beautiful blue planet below. It seemed so peaceful from space, giving no hint of its true nature. How many other mistakes had they made in their assumptions about humans? What other surprises were waiting to be discovered? The ship's communication officer confirmed the transmission was ready. Commander Gray took one last look at the data before sending it. This report would change everything. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. As the transmission began, he couldn't help but wonder how the Council would react to learning they had been casually interacting with beings who treated lethal environments as minor inconveniences. One thing was certain: the galaxy was about to get a lot more interesting. The Great Hall of the Galactic Science Academy buzzed with nervous energy as researchers from a dozen worlds gathered to discuss the shocking revelations about Earth. Holographic displays filled the air, each showing different aspects of human capabilities that defied alien understanding. Dr. White, The lead xenobiologist stood before his colleagues, pointing to a particularly disturbing set of images. As you can see, humans regularly consume substances that would be lethal to most species. They actually seek out chemicals they call spices that cause pain responses in their mouths, for pleasure. The assembled scientists shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One researcher had to leave the room when footage showed humans eating something called ghost peppers while laughing. But that's not even the most concerning part, Dr. White continued. Observe this footage from their extreme sports activities. The screen showed humans jumping from high platforms with nothing but thin cords attached to their backs, diving into deep ocean caves, and climbing sheer cliff faces with minimal equipment. Several scientists had to look away. Just then, the doors to the hall opened, and Jack Anderson, the human diplomatic representative, walked in casually. The alien scientists instinctively moved back, their new understanding of human capabilities making them nervous. "I heard you folks had some questions about Earth," Jack said with a friendly smile that exposed his bone-white teeth, another feature that unnerved many species. "Thought I might help clear things up." Dr. White tried to maintain his professional composure. "Mr. Anderson, we've discovered that humans regularly engage in activities that would be fatal to most species. Can you explain why?" Jack looked at the displayed footage and chuckled. "Oh, that's just people having fun on the weekend. Nothing special, really." "Fun," squeaked a researcher from the back. "They jump from orbital height for fun." "Well, not orbital height," Jack corrected. "That's just regular skydiving from about 14,000 feet, though I guess some people do try for higher altitudes when they can." The room fell silent. Dr. White pulled up another set of data. "Mr. Anderson, our research shows that humans can survive in temperature ranges that would kill most species, regenerate from severe injuries, and continue functioning despite massive physical trauma. How do you explain this?" Jack shrugged, a gesture that made several aliens flinch. "That's just how we're built, I guess. Earth's got all kinds of environments, so we adapted. You should see what some of our athletes can do." "Athletes?" Dr. White asked, dreading the answer. "Yeah, like ultramarathon runners. They run hundreds of miles through Death Valley in the middle of summer. Great endurance training." One of the younger scientists fainted at this casual mention of running through a place literally named Death Valley. Jack continued, oblivious to the growing horror in the room. "Or there's those folks who swim in Arctic waters, or the free climbers who scale mountains without ropes. Humans like to challenge themselves, you know." "Challenge themselves," Dr. White repeated weakly. "You mean humans intentionally seek out potentially lethal situations for personal growth?" "Sure," Jack replied cheerfully. "How else are you going to know what you're capable of?" The room erupted in worried whispers. This was worse than they had imagined. Humans weren't just surviving their death world. They were actively seeking out even more dangerous situations for entertainment and self-improvement. Dr. White looked at his data tablets, then back at the smiling human. "Mr. Anderson, does it concern you that your species regularly engages in activities that would be considered suicidal by galactic standards?" Jack thought for a moment. "Never really considered it that way. I mean, life's got to have some excitement, right? Speaking of which, anyone want to try rock climbing after this? I found a great cliff face just outside the city." The sound of multiple alien scientists fainting filled the room. As medical teams rushed in, Jack stood there confused, wondering what he'd said wrong. After all, he'd only suggested a beginner-level climb. The secure meeting chamber deep within the Galactic Defense Complex was designed to hold the most sensitive military discussions in the galaxy. Today, it held something even more volatile: fear. Captain Stone, a veteran of 3 interstellar conflicts, stood before the assembled military leaders, his battle-scarred carapace reflecting the harsh lighting. The holographic display behind him showed footage that made even the most hardened warriors uncomfortable. "This," he said, pointing to the image, "is what humans call basic training." The footage showed human soldiers running through obstacles under live fire, carrying heavy weights through swamps, and surviving in conditions that would kill most species. But what truly horrified the alien commanders was the expression on the humans' faces. They were smiling. "They're not just enduring this," Captain Stone continued, his voice grave. "They're enjoying it. And this is just how they prepare for combat." Admiral Blue, commander of the Third Fleet, raised one of his tentacles. "Surely this must be their elite forces." "No," Stone replied, changing the display. "This is standard training for all their military personnel. Their special forces." He paused, searching for words. "Their special forces do things we can't even show in this meeting without causing panic." The room filled with uneasy murmurs. General Spark, representing the coalition of mineral worlds, spoke next. "What about their weapons technology? Surely we have the advantage there." Captain Stone's expression darkened. "That's the most disturbing part. Humans don't rely on advanced technology for their military effectiveness. They've mastered what they call adaptive warfare. They can use anything as a weapon. During their last internal conflict, they turned farming equipment into battle machines." The display showed humans modifying civilian vehicles for combat, creating weapons from household items, and surviving in combat conditions that would render most species' technology useless. "And their recovery abilities," Stone continued, switching to medical data. "A human soldier can continue fighting with injuries that would incapacitate our strongest warriors. They can lose significant amounts of blood and still function. Some have been documented fighting with multiple broken bones." A younger commander raised his wing appendage. "But surely they must have some weakness." "Their main weakness appears to be their strong pack-bonding instincts," Stone replied. "They will risk certain death to save their companions. But they've turned even this seeming weakness into a strength. It makes their units incredibly cohesive and determined." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. These weren't just powerful warriors. These were beings who had evolved on a planet that tried to kill them daily, and they had not only survived but thrived. "There's more," Stone said quietly. "We've discovered that human children play games that simulate combat. They start training for warfare before they can even walk, not by design, but because it's ingrained in their culture." Admiral Blue's color shifted to a pale shade of worry. "Are you suggesting they're naturally militant?" "No," Stone replied. "That's what makes them even more dangerous. They don't want to fight. They prefer peace. But when they do fight," he switched to footage of historical human battles, "they commit totally. Every human becomes a potential warrior. They can turn anything into a weapon, any place into a fortress, and any situation to their advantage." The assembled leaders watched in stunned silence as Stone presented his final analysis. "In my professional opinion, any conflict with humanity would be catastrophic. They don't just survive on a death world. They've mastered it. Every human is a potential survival expert, warrior, and tactical genius by our standards." General Spark spoke again, his voice barely a whisper. "What do you recommend?" Captain Stone looked around the room, meeting each leader's eyes. "We must never give them a reason to fight us, because if we do, we're not just fighting an army. We're fighting an entire species that treats deadly environments as training grounds and lethal situations as challenges to overcome." As the meeting adjourned, the military leaders left with a new understanding. Humans weren't just another spacefaring species. They were living weapons forged in the crucible of Earth's deadly environments. The luxury resort on Paradise Prime was considered one of the safest places in the galaxy. The planet's perfect climate, minimal gravity, and carefully controlled environment made it a haven for species from across known space. Until today. The resort's central dome had collapsed during a freak geological event, trapping hundreds of visitors inside. Among them were 30 human tourists who had been enjoying their first off-world vacation. What happened next would change galactic society forever. Emergency crews arrived to find scenes that defied explanation. The humans had not only survived but had organized themselves into rescue teams. They were lifting debris that should have been impossible to move in their gravity class, entering toxic zones without protection, and helping injured aliens to safety. The humans, they're breaking all safety protocols, reported Chief Medical Officer Reed, watching in horror as another human emerged from a smoke-filled chamber carrying two unconscious aliens. They're exposing themselves to fatal conditions. The resort's security cameras captured footage that would soon spread across the galaxy. Humans diving into flooded lower levels to rescue trapped guests. Humans using their bodies as shields to protect more fragile species from falling debris. Most shocking of all, humans treating their numerous injuries as minor inconveniences. "It's just a broken arm," one human said, continuing to help clear rubble with his uninjured limb. "The other one works fine." The alien emergency teams could only watch in stunned silence as the humans coordinated their efforts, shouting encouragement to each other and even making jokes about the situation. "Hey Tom," one human called out while lifting a fallen support beam, "still think this is more boring than your last vacation?" "Well," Tom replied, emerging from a gap that should have been too small for any beam to squeeze through, "at least we're not stuck in that museum like last year." The humans' laughter echoed through the devastated resort, causing nearby alien rescue workers to back away in confusion and fear. Director Green, the resort's head of security, watched the scenes unfold from his emergency command center. His tentacles trembled as he recorded his official report. "The humans are displaying behavior that defies all known survival protocols," he dictated. "They appear to be treating this catastrophic event as some form of group activity. They're actively seeking out the most dangerous areas, refusing medical treatment for what our doctors classify as severe injuries, and," he paused, watching a human child help an adult shift a massive piece of debris. "They're involving their young in the rescue efforts." The situation reached its peak when the resort's power core began to destabilize. The alien engineers declared the situation hopeless, ordering a full evacuation. That's when 3 humans volunteered to enter the core chamber. "The radiation levels in there would kill most species instantly," the chief engineer protested. "We've got good radiation resistance," one of the humans replied with a shrug. "Besides, someone's got to fix it." 20 minutes later, the core was stabilized. The humans emerged, their skin reddened from radiation exposure, but still insisting they were fine and asking what else needed to be done. By the time the crisis was over, the resort was in ruins, but there had been 0 casualties. The humans gathered in what remained of the main lobby, sharing water and treating their injuries with what they called basic first aid. "That was actually kind of fun," one of them remarked. "Though next time I prefer to do this kind of thing on purpose, like at one of those disaster adventure parks back home." The news spread across the galaxy at FTL speeds. Humans hadn't just survived a catastrophic event. They had thrived in it, treated it as a challenge, and even enjoyed aspects of it. The footage of their actions sparked widespread panic among more fragile species. In the Galactic Council's emergency session chamber, representatives watched the resort's security recordings in horrified silence. The implications were clear. Humans didn't just survive disasters. They conquered them. And they were already talking about building entertainment facilities to simulate similar conditions. The galaxy would never be the same. Dr. Blue had always considered herself brave, even by the standards of xenoanthropologists. But as her research vessel entered Earth's atmosphere, she questioned her decision to study humans in their natural habitat. Her protective suit, designed to shield her from Earth's harsh conditions, felt uncomfortably tight as she watched the planet's surface approach. The landing site was in a region humans called Montana, chosen for its supposedly mild conditions. "Mild is relative," she muttered, checking her environmental readings. The temperature swings alone would kill most species she knew. Her first shock came at the spaceport. Humans were walking around without any protective gear, children playing in the open air. A small human, who couldn't have been more than 6 years old, waved at her ship and then continued climbing a dangerous-looking metal structure they called a playground. "Welcome to Earth," her human guide, Tom, greeted her cheerfully. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" Dr. Blue checked her instruments. The temperature was fluctuating wildly. Ultraviolet radiation was bombarding the surface, and the oxygen levels were high enough to be toxic on most worlds. "This is what you consider beautiful?" she asked. "Oh, sure. Wait until winter, though. That's when it gets really interesting." Her first week of observation provided more surprises than her previous decade of research. She watched in horror as humans consumed substances that would be classified as chemical weapons on other worlds. They called it spicy food. Children routinely engaged in activities that would qualify as military training on her world, but here it was called playing sports. And these young humans, she wrote in her journal, they deliberately seek out high places to climb, fast velocities to experience, and physical contests that risk injury. Their parents not only allow this, but encourage it as healthy development. One morning, she witnessed a human child fall and scrape their knee. Instead of rushing to a medical facility, the parents simply cleaned the wound, applied what they called a Band-Aid, and told the child to walk it off. The child was playing again minutes later. "Their regenerative abilities are remarkable," she noted, "but more remarkable is their attitude toward injury and danger. They expect to get hurt and consider it a natural part of learning." During her second week, she observed human activities in various environments. She watched them swim in freezing water for fun, climb sheer rock faces for recreation, and deliberately expose themselves to extreme temperatures in something called the sauna. The most disturbing observation came during a visit to a human school. Young humans were learning about the various ways their planet could kill them: earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes, floods, and their response was to develop safety plans and emergency procedures rather than flee to safer regions. "Their children," she wrote, hands shaking, "are trained from an early age to survive conditions that will eliminate most species. They don't fear their environment. They prepare for it." In her third week, she discovered something even more shocking. Humans had categories for their dangerous activities. Extreme sports were considered recreational. Adventure tourism involved deliberately seeking out harsh conditions. Even their entertainment involved simulated danger. During her final days on Earth, Dr. Blue witnessed a thunderstorm. While she huddled in her reinforced shelter, humans went about their normal activities, some even standing outside to watch the lightning. "Beautiful storm," Tom commented, as electrical discharges capable of vaporizing most life forms split the sky. Her final report to the Galactic Council was clear. Humans haven't merely adapted to their death world. They've embraced it. Their children are born into an environment that should be lethal, and rather than seeking safety, they learn to thrive in it. They don't simply survive dangerous conditions. They intentionally seek them out for entertainment, education, and personal growth. She added a personal note. "Perhaps most terrifying is their complete inability to recognize how extraordinary this is. To them, living on the edge of death is simply normal." As her ship left Earth's atmosphere, Dr. Blue watched a group of humans preparing to jump from a perfectly functional aircraft with only thin fabric to slow their fall. They called it skydiving. She called it proof that humans were the most terrifying species in the galaxy. The Galactic Council chamber, usually a model of decorum, had descended into chaos. Representatives from 100 worlds shouted over each other while the human diplomat, Jack Anderson, stood calmly at the center podium. "Order. We will have order," demanded High Counselor Green, his crystalline form flashing with stress patterns. The chamber gradually quieted, though the tension remained palpable. The representative from the Proxima Alliance spoke first, his translator struggling to convey his agitation. "We demand the immediate quarantine of all human-inhabited worlds. They are too dangerous to allow free travel within civilized space." Jack cleared his throat. "With respect, that might be difficult to enforce." "And why is that?" asked the Proxima representative. "Well," Jack said, pulling up a holographic display, because we've already established colonies on worlds you classified as uninhabitable. In fact, we've been terraforming them. The chamber erupted again. The display showed human settlements on worlds that made Earth look tame by comparison. Planets with crushing gravity, toxic atmospheres, and extreme temperature ranges. The planet you called Death's Cradle, Jack continued, pointing to one image. We've renamed it New Montana. Nice place. Great skiing in the methane peaks. Several council members had to be treated for shock. Death's Cradle had been considered so dangerous that automated warning beacons surrounded its solar system. High Councilor Green managed to regain control of the chamber. Mr. Anderson, surely you understand our concerns. Your species treats lethal environments as vacation spots. You've turned worlds we quarantined into tourist destinations. We prefer to see it as expanding the frontiers of habitable space, Jack replied. Besides, those worlds were going to waste. We've made them productive. The representative from the Science Directorate raised a trembling appendage. But the risk, the sheer recklessness. Actually, Jack interrupted, we've been meaning to discuss that. We've noticed several regions of space you've marked as hazardous that have great potential. We'd like to start development projects there. The silence that followed was deafening. The implications were clear. Humans weren't just surviving in Deathworlds, they were actively seeking them out and transforming them. This is precisely why they must be contained, the Proxima representative shouted. They're expanding into zones that could destabilize the entire galaxy. Jack's expression hardened slightly. I should remind the Council that attempts to contain humanity haven't worked out well in our history. We prefer peaceful cooperation, but we will defend our right to explore and settle where we choose. The subtle reminder of human military capability sent a shiver through the chamber. Everyone present had seen the classified reports about human warfare. Perhaps, suggested a previously silent representative from the diplomatic corps, we should consider a different approach. Rather than containment, we could establish guidelines for human expansion. That's reasonable, Jack agreed. We're happy to share our terraforming technology and survival techniques. Could help make those hazardous zones accessible to everyone. The council members exchanged worried glances. The idea of making Deathworlds habitable was almost as frightening as the humans themselves. High Councilor Green called for a recess to consider the situation. As the representatives filed out, many gave Jack a wide berth. One last thing, Jack called out. We've already started surveying the regions beyond the outer rim. You know, the ones marked "Here be dragons" on your charts. Looks promising out there. Several representatives fainted. The humans weren't just going to change the galaxy. They were going to redefine what was possible. In his private chamber, High Councilor Green updated the official record. The human question has become the greatest challenge of our age. We must either find a way to accommodate their terrifying capabilities, or risk watching them reshape the galaxy in their image. Most disturbing of all, they seem to think this is all perfectly normal. The final session of the Galactic Council's emergency meeting began with Dr. Blue's presentation, a comprehensive analysis of humanity's unique capabilities and potential benefits to galactic society. Standing before the assembled representatives, Dr. Blue displayed a series of images that had once terrified her, but now filled her with a different kind of awe. Distinguished council members, she began. I spent 3 months studying humans in their natural habitat. What I discovered changed not just my understanding of them, but my view of what's possible in our galaxy. The holographic display showed humans performing rescue operations in conditions that would kill most species. These aren't just survivors, she explained. They're beings who have mastered environments we considered impossible to inhabit. And this makes them less dangerous? Asked a skeptical representative. No, Dr. Blue replied. It makes them invaluable. She switched to new footage. Humans establishing colonies on toxic worlds, building habitats in space, and developing technologies to survive in extreme conditions. Look at what they've accomplished, she continued. While we avoided dangerous regions of space, they found ways to thrive there. Where we saw death, they saw opportunity. But most importantly, they've consistently used their abilities to help others. The display showed footage from recent disasters. Humans rushing into burning buildings to save other species, diving into toxic environments to repair crucial systems, and surviving conditions that would have meant certain death for regular emergency responders. Jack Anderson, the human representative, stood up. "We'd like to propose a solution to the current crisis. Earth will establish a galactic emergency response force. Any world, any species that needs help in extreme conditions, will be there." The chamber buzzed with discussion. High Counselor Green leaned forward. "You're offering to use your unique capabilities to help other species." "Exactly," Jack replied. "We're already training specialized teams. Who better to handle emergencies in deadly environments than people who consider such conditions a normal Tuesday?" Dr. Blue advanced her presentation to show the proposed emergency response system. Humans have developed protocols for nearly every type of catastrophe. They've turned their Deathworld survival instincts into a science. The council members watched as human rescue teams demonstrated their abilities, operating in radiation zones, toxic atmospheres, crushing pressures, and extreme temperatures. Furthermore, Dr. Blue added, they're willing to teach other species their survival techniques. They've already developed training programs adapted for different physiologies. A representative from the Medical Coalition spoke up. Their medical knowledge of trauma and extreme conditions could save countless lives. And their colonization techniques could open up vast new regions for settlement, added another. Jack nodded. "We're not just offering emergency services. We're offering to share everything we've learned about surviving in places you thought were impossible to survive in. Think of us as galactic survival experts." High Counselor Green called for a vote. The result was clear. Humanity would not be quarantined. Instead, they would become the galaxy's premier emergency responders and survival specialists. "There's one more thing," Jack said as the vote concluded. "We'd like to establish what we call adventure training centers on various worlds. Places where other species can safely learn to handle extreme conditions. My kids suggest starting with the beginner-level stuff, basic volcano climbing, underwater cave exploration, that sort of thing." Several council members looked faint, but others showed interest. The galaxy was changing and humanity was leading the way. Dr. Blue concluded her presentation with a final observation. "The species we once feared may be exactly what this galaxy needs. They've turned their Deathworld nature into a force for good. Perhaps it's time we stopped being horrified by humanity's capabilities and started being thankful for them." As the session ended, a new classification was created specifically for Earth and human-inhabited worlds. Class U, for Unbound. It was an acknowledgement that humans had moved beyond the traditional limitations of what was considered survivable. The galaxy had gained not just powerful allies, but teachers who could show them how to face their fears and survive the impossible. The Deathworlders had become the galaxy's greatest hope for expanding the boundaries of possible.